ABBA's 1979 World Tour. The end of the show is near. Björn addresses the audience. Do you want to hear an oldie? After a massive yes, he adds further information. One of the oldest? And, given the expectation of the audience, he asks, which one do you think? The answer is overwhelming. Waterloo. Björn shouts OK, and ABBA starts a very rocky version of the oldie. It is a subject to debate if the 5-year-old Waterloo could be defined as an oldie by 1979, but the truth is that if we go back to 1974 and remember ABBA appearing on the Eurovision Song Contest stage, childish smiles, fully surrendering themselves in order to mesmerize the audience from all over the world with their crazy costumes, singing lyrics that compare the end of a romance with the Waterloo Battle, featuring an orchestra conductor dressed up in a Napoleonic wardrobe and using a brand new name, an acronym for the band. Yes, Waterloo was a song from another era, from the glam times, from the times when ABBA insisted for rock and roll and felt insecure about winning that final in Brighton, England, insecure and filled of shyness. And if we compare that ABBA, which would suffer after their triumph, an entire year of failures related to record releases that would label them as another typical Eurovision one-hit wonder with the ABBA at Wembley on their pharaonic stage, with their large amount of world hits, now millionaires, holding the Bigger Than the Beatles title, Waterloo in 1979, yes, looked almost prehistoric. After the third place in the Swedish hit of Eurovision 1973 with Ring Ring, Bara du slagen signal, Björn, Benny and Stig were afraid of betting to another rock and roll as a contender for the 1974 contest, despite knowing that Waterloo indeed was their strongest song that they had composed. In the beginning they considered the ballad Hasta Mañana as a possible contender until they shook their heads and took their chances on the rocky Napoleon song, instead of a typical Eurovision ballad that focused on Agneta as the main singer. Its working title was Honey Pie, but it was hard to build lyrics around it. So Stig changed it after reading about the Battle of Waterloo while he was spending a Saturday in a library, rummaging intensely in the search of a strong title. Could that be the source for the history book on the shelf part of the lyrics? This song had everything that the hit needed. An appealing title in a central place, the girl's voices singing powerfully and blasting the name of the song, a persistent guitar and bass riff created by Jens Schaffer, a tenor sax placed in the perfect places, exhorting claps in the chorus and the piano with classical reminiscences, apart from some Moog chords that gave more depth to the musical landscape. Everything saturated by the indestructible Michael Treto's wall of sound. ABBA would play back during the Eurovision contest. The voices and sax would be played live over pre-recording backing track. Benny, always paying attention to the perfection of the result, confessed after the show that he was afraid of having forgotten the lyrics once on stage, and that he couldn't help thinking about the 500 million viewers at the other side of the camera. His fears, nevertheless, had a reason. Something was wrong with the tape they had brought from Sweden with the song recorded on it. During the rehearsals, it lacked strength. Björn, Benny and Stig didn't leave the engineer in peace until the problem was actually solved. To add more fear, the record company that Stig visited in London rejected Waterloo. The directors argued that it sounded old, especially because of its electric piano, and recommended him to return when he had something more modern. After the song's triumph, the same company would contact Stig in order to buy the song. He always liked to remember how he hung the phone. Rutger Gunnarsson played the bass, while the other ABBA bass player took charge of another role in the whole staging with which the band was about to conquer the world. He would be Napoleon in the cover of the LP. They needed a short person, and that's how they came to think about me, he confessed. Curiously, there is not a single bass contribution from him in the whole released album. The single would be a #1 success in many territories in Europe, the UK included. It will be a top 10 single in some 10 countries, America among them. After ABBA's victory, and while the group's image traveled all around the world in videos, photos, recording, etc., the press reporters, thirsty of ABBA and their manager interviews, made endless questions. From, which will be your next hit? To, do you understand that 40,000 men died in the Battle of Waterloo? Stig controlled his typical sharpness and only limited to ask them why they had to politicize everything. But it was the beginning of the flood of criticism that would meet ABBA's career in the future. The most remembered critical review that ABBA met in those times was the one that Sam Christer Landblad wrote for the Dagens Nyheter newspaper. It was an evil article which Stig himself felt as a strike coming from a compatriot. It read, "The song Waterloo by ABBA is pure plagiarism. The intro is stolen from 10cc. The chorus comes from Build Me Up Buttercup by the English group Foundations, and the saxophone comes from Junior Walker Records. I also recognize pieces of Tchaikovsky's first piano recital." Christer was utterly wrong and exaggerated some facts. But that was not the first time when a critic destroyed a fine work or an artist in order to highlight himself. Of course, Benny's work at the piano not only has a reminiscence to Tchaikovsky's work, but also to that of the Norwegian Edvard Grieg. But there are no copies of those works in Waterloo. There is the inspiration of a rock musician who loved classical music and applied its influences with excellent good taste. If the fast and exquisite chords before the history book in the shelf are considered an influence from the glorious chords in the beginning of Tchaikovsky's first piano recital, what a praise for Benny! This reflection fits as well the claimed plagiarism of the Walker's arrangements. To add more, it is never identified that 10cc's song supposedly copied, which puts a stress on the lack of reliability on the review. And in relation to the Foundation's super hit, well, let's listen for a while the section supposedly plagiarized. Of course, it reminisces the chorus from ABBA's Waterloo. Let's listen to that song. Now, let's play the exact notes which were plagiarism. Seven notes. Seven notes which are made of only three different notes which are neighbors. There is no place to talk about plagiarism. My quotation of that review does not mean to give it any importance. On the contrary, my aim is to use it, indeed, to show how rich Waterloo is in terms of styles. Soul, rock, classical and, of course, pop among them. And that way in which always they could build unforgettable melodies with so few notes. Waterloo is, of course, unforgettable. Time will let ABBA give us more important, mature, daring songs. Maybe this hit does not appear among the fans' 5 ABBA favorites, but it remains as an excellent piece of music and a key moment in the group's history. What is more, if we remember that kind of law which says that the most important things are kept for the end, let us think. Wasn't Waterloo a number which closed the shows of the 1979 tour? Wasn't it an encore in ABBA Gold after the fake goodbye delivered by the second-to-last track, Thank You for the Music? Not forgetting that it was a funny ending in the movie Mamma Mia, during which the characters performed in raped in delirious costumes from the glam times. Main differences of the Swedish version. In general, Benny's Moog sounds louder, the sax and the claps sound more clear. One Waterloo is pronounced as in the English version. Every version followed the pronunciation of that word according to every different language, but in Swedish there is one Waterloo pronounced in English. Main differences of the French version. The song features a short preventive chord before it starts as we know it. The backing track has more compression and the girls sing more softly. The nature of the French language helps for this effect, and the voices are louder. This includes Björn's harmonies. Main differences of the German version. The backing track has more compression. The voices in general are louder. Frida's voice is more prominent, something that does not seem to be due to mixing. There is an alternative version, a mix of the English version that was published as a single for a very brief period as a mistake in Sweden. When that mistake was discovered, not only the record was replaced for the most famous mix, but it is clear that the master tape of that alternative tape was destroyed. Henrik Johnson, sound engineer, made a new master from a single vinyl record so as to publish it on CD in 2005 in the complete studio recordings. The most clear differences with the most known version is the musical background, a little rougher, where the guitars sound a little steely, while in the 4 chords previous to the chorus they sound with some wah-wah effect added. The 1 chord harmony that the girls sing in the chorus is a little louder. When they sing I Feel Like I Win When I Lose, it can be heard a higher vocal harmony that goes along with When I Lose. In the verses, the girls' Oh Yeah is followed by another one as a counterpoint, shouted with a lot of energy, almost carelessly. The sax does not appear in the first chorus. When it appears from the second one on, it sounds a little dull. In general, the whole production is somewhat cold and lacks the generous wall of sound that the most known version flaunts.